Hello, all, and welcome to my presentation on John Maynard Keynes and his theory of aggregate demand. First and foremost, we must ask ourselves, who was John Maynard Keynes? Well, let me tell you. John Maynard Keynes was born in England and was raised by his scholarly mother and his father, who also happened to be an economist. His combined passions for math and politics led him to his intense interest in economics while studying at Cambridge, after being inspired by an econ professor. Before becoming known as the founder of modern macroeconomics, since his work inspired the work of so many other great economists, he published a few well known pieces explaining other countries' economic systems. However, the general theory of employment, interest, and money may be the work that he is most known for, as it is one of the most influential books in economic history. His work led to the concept of Keynesian economics and the Keynesian model that speaks on the correlation of economic growth, inflation, and unemployment. While his ideas were revolutionary, they were also considered to be highly controversial to other economists. He was a heavy advocate for free markets and the general theory, which states that wages be kept stable because cuts in wages would decrease income, consumption, and consequently aggregate demand, thus leading us into his association with the theory of aggregate demand. So then, what is aggregate demand? By definition, aggregate demand is the measurement of the total amount of demand for all finished goods and services. It is expressed as the total amount of money exchanged for those goods and services at a specific price level and point in time. Similarly to GDP, since they are both made up of all consumer goods, capital goods, exports, and government spending. These are known as the components of aggregate demand. So, how shifts in the aggregate demand work is right shifts will occur when spending occurs. So, when consumers or businesses increase their confidence, price level rise and the aggregate demand curve shifts right. The same goes for government spending. Government spending also causes the aggregate demand curve to shift right. Leftward shifts occur when the opposite happens, so less spending and decreased confidence in price levels. Where John Maynard Keynes comes in is in his work with employment levels, inflation, and causes of recessions, along with the solutions on how to get rid of them. Keynes' theories are oriented around aggregate demand rather than aggregate supply, which differed from how other economists handled the information. Keynes' studies brought us the Keynesian perspective and model, which says firms produce output only if they anticipate it to sell. This deals with calculating the real GDP rather than the nation's potential or nominal GDP. This is because it doesn't take an account of inflation rates while nominal does, GDP does. With that in mind, Keynes concluded that aggregate demand is essentially not stable and pretty unpredictable, in fact, with the immense amount of various factors that play into its outcome. While he did believe in the rules he came up with that explained movement in the curve, there's also gaps that may pop up that go against his simple explanations for aggregate demand movement. One possibility is an inflation gap, which occurs when the demand overwhelms the output. Then there is also the recessionary gap, which happens when the economy is at equilibrium, however, unemployment is high. Keynes's answers to both of these problems were for the government to step in and fill the gap in whichever means necessary, which would be either by increasing their spending or decreasing their spending, depending on the situation. Although his solutions made quite a bit of sense, many people were left feeling uneasy and unsettled at the idea of the government having that much pull and leverage in the economy. Keynes's push for the importance of and usefulness of individual markets made him easier to agree with to an extent, since he believed the government should only step in to help, but not have full power and control over setting prices. Thank you all for listening, and I hope I helped you learn a little something new.